Hi guys, my name is Justine Price, and for my case, I chose Volkswagen the Betrayer, a case study of gross disregard for the welfare of stakeholders worldwide. This case looks at how one of the biggest automakers, which is Volkswagen, in the world got caught in a massive ethical scandal, what happened afterward, and what lessons we can take away from it in the eye of public relations. So, back in 2015, the US Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA, discovered that Volkswagen had installed a software in their diesel cars. This software was called a defeat device and could detect when the car was being detected in a lab and would temporarily reduce emissions. That way, the car would pass all the environmental tests, but out on the road, the cars were actually releasing up to 40 times the legal limit of nitrogen oxide. And this was not just a small mistake implemented in a few cars. It actually affected over 11 million cars worldwide. And Volkswagen had been advertising these as clean diesel cars, convincing consumers as well as the EPA and the Department of Justice that they were making a good choice in buying and passing these cars. But in reality, these cars were some of the most polluting vehicles that were on the road at the time. The key players involved in the situation were Volkswagen, including their automakers, executives, and engineers who actually all agreed on the idea of lying and cheating to get these vehicles through emission testing. And then there were the regulators, which were the EPA, the Department of Justice, as well as German and European authorities, who were misled by Volkswagen and actually allowed these cars to go out on the road. Customers were also large stakeholders in this whole situation because they were the ones who were again lied to, as well as the ones who were actually driving the vehicles. They thought they were eco friendly and safe for the environment, but obviously they weren't. Beyond the customers, the public and environment itself was also majorly impacted because of the higher emissions that were being put into the air. This meant that more air pollution and negative health effects were being brought out into on Earth, which makes it not just a business issue, but also a public welfare issue that Volkswagen is going to eventually have to take on firsthand. So, the ethical dilemma in this situation was that Volkswagen had two choices, and it came down to this. Should they spend the time and money to truly make their cars meet the emission standards, or should they cheat the system to save money, protect profits, and sell more cars? Obviously, we know what they did in this situation, and they went with deception. They prioritize short term profits and market share over honesty, responsibility, and public health, which obviously had a very big downfall for them. And while that decision may have helped them look good for just a few years, the long term consequences just show how damaging unethical choices can be. The resolution to this was that in 2015, the EPA revealed the defeat devices, and this blew up the news worldwide. Volkswagen eventually had to admit and come clean to cheating, and their fallout was massive in both sales as well as trust. Financially, the company paid over $30 billion in fines, legal settlements, and buybacks. This included compensating consumers as well as covering environmental damages. It was one of the most expensive corporate scandals ever, and several executives were actually directly implicated and faced with criminal charges, and some of them even had such serious punishment of serving prison time. This showed that the governments were serious about oops, holding, this showed that the government was serious about holding individuals accountable, not just the corporations. Um, Volkswagen's reputation also collapsed majorly. The company had spent decades building an image of reliability and innovation, and in just a few short weeks, that trust was gone. Customers instantly felt betrayed, sales ended up dropping, and the brand's credibility was badly damaged. To recover, Volkswagen ended up launching an apology campaign and rebranded around sustainability, as we can see today. And one of the biggest changes was a shift towards electric vehicles. They wanted to rebuild their image by leading the movement towards clean energy, which is pretty funny because they were lying about that in the first place. But eventually they did get back up on their feet. The ethical framework around this, something that we know very well, the PRSA Code of Ethics. This case violated those three big issues: value on or honesty, transparency, and fairness. Volkswagen misrepresented facts. They withheld key information and denied consumers the ability to make informed choices. And basically, was just the opposite of what we look for being a PR professional. For utilitarianism, Volkswagen's actions failed completely. A few executives and shareholders benefited financially in the short term, but millions of people, including customers, regulators, and the public, were all harmed. The environment suffered, and so did Volkswagen's reputation. And the overall harm far outweighed the benefit, so it obviously wasn't an ethical choice. From a deontological perspective, Volkswagen had also failed. Companies have a duty to be honest, to follow laws, and to protect the public's health and safety, which Volkswagen obviously did not. Volkswagen knowingly broke these duties and deliberately deceived regulators and consumers. My discussion questions that I have for you guys are: for the PR professionals or anyone that knew in general, do you think they should have spoken up about the issue before it got out of hand? Why or why not? And what do you think is required for a company to be seen as reformed and trustworthy instead of just doing damage control? Thank you for listening.